Samantha Hayes, 32, an ER nurse juggling night shifts and single motherhood, never imagined her worst emergency wouldn't be at the hospital, but at home. Desperate for childcare, she left her 8-year-old daughter Lily with her seemingly dependable parents. 48 hours later, she received a call no parent should ever get. Lily was missing. Her world stopped. Racing from the hospital in half-worn scrubs, Samantha burst into the CPS office only to discover the unthinkable. Her own parents had handed Lily over to foster care, then boarded a flight to Hawaii with her sister's family. No warning. No goodbye. Just a note on the counter and smiling selfies under palm trees. What follows is a chilling unraveling of family secrets, favoritism, and betrayal so cold, it tests the very meaning of love and blood ties. Where are you watching this from right now? Drop your location in the comments, and brace yourself for a story you won't forget. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead as I burst through the heavy glass doors of the Child Protective Services building, my heart pounding louder than my footsteps. Where is my daughter? My voice echoed off the sterile walls, drawing startled glances from receptionists and caseworkers. Papers fluttered to the floor as I slammed my hands on the front desk. My name is Samantha Hayes. Someone brought my daughter here. Lily Hayes. 8 years old. Curly auburn hair. Green eyes. Where is she? The woman behind the desk blinked at me, startled. Ma'am. Don't tell me to calm down, I snapped, chest heaving. Tell me where my daughter is. A second worker appeared from the back office, holding a tablet. We need to verify your identity first. Please. My ID is in my bag, I said, thrusting it forward. I'm her mother. Full custody. My parents were supposed to watch her for 3 nights while I worked emergency shifts at the hospital. They didn't tell me they were going to, my voice cracked. They just left her here? The woman looked uncomfortable as she read through something on her screen. I understand you're upset, Ms. Hayes, but I need you to take a seat while we find her file. I'm not sitting down until someone tells me where my child is. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I yanked it out, hoping for news, but it was just a social media notification. I didn't have time for that. I opened my call log instead, redialing Detective Wilson's number for the 3rd time in 20 minutes. Straight to voicemail. My legs were shaking. I hadn't eaten since last night. I hadn't slept more than 3 hours in the last 72. My hands were cold even though I was sweating through my scrubs and jacket. She was just supposed to stay with them for 3 nights, I said to no one in particular, like trying to make sense of something senseless would keep me from unraveling. I packed her meals. I labeled everything. Her inhaler, her allergy meds. Her bedtime routine. Her favorite stuffed animal. I trusted them. A man stepped into the room, older, sharp suit, badge clipped to his belt. Ms. Hayes? I'm Officer Delgado. Detective Wilson sent me. He's en route. I understand your daughter, Lily, may have been placed in temporary foster care by your parents. I turned to him, my voice ragged. They didn't even call me. They didn't ask. They just gave her away. He gave me a grim nod. I'm going to do everything I can to get you the answers you need. A woman from the back office finally reappeared with a file in hand. We do have record of a Lily Hayes. She was placed in an emergency foster care home last night. The intake form states that the guardians, your parents, claimed they were unable to care for her and that the mother was unreachable. Unreachable. I nearly laughed. I'm an ER nurse. I've been at the hospital for 3 nights, yes, but I told them. I told them exactly when I'd be back. They knew. They lied. I sank into a plastic chair, legs finally giving out beneath me. Officer Delgado crouched beside me. We're going to get her back. But we need to understand exactly what happened. I stared blankly at the floor. What happened, I whispered, is that they abandoned her. My parents. Her grandparents. People who smiled in Christmas cards and told neighbors how proud they were of their family. They walked into a government office and left my daughter with strangers. From the edge of the desk, my phone buzzed again. This time I glanced at the screen. It was a tagged post. I opened it on instinct. There they were. My father, Ronald, standing on a sunlit beach in Maui. His signature aviators perched on his head. His arm draped around my sister's son, both grinning at the camera. Behind them, Karen, my mother, laughing with Victoria and Madison as they posed in matching Hawaiian shirts, holding bright cocktails in hand. The caption read, "Surprise family vacation. So blessed to have grandparents who always show up for us. Hashtag Ohana time, hashtag family first." Family first. The timestamp on the post matched the exact time Lily had been dropped off at CPS. They hadn't just failed to call me. They hadn't just been overwhelmed. This had been planned. Deliberate. Premeditated. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I stood up slowly, numbness turning to clarity. I opened my phone, found Detective Wilson's direct number and hit call. When his voice answered, I said only one thing. They're in Hawaii. I want them held accountable. As I waited for the legal machine to start moving, my voice returned to its narrator's cadence, low and steady. 2 days ago I thought I was simply asking my parents for a favor. I didn't know I was handing my daughter to betrayal. 48 hours earlier, the air in my apartment was heavy with exhaustion and guilt. I stood in the kitchen, balancing Lily's lunch containers while my phone buzzed with another hospital alert. The trauma center was understaffed again, and as one of the few senior ER nurses available, I'd been scheduled for 3 consecutive night shifts. Lisa, our usual sitter, had flown to Michigan to visit her parents. I had exhausted every other backup option. That's when I called my parents. I kept my voice steady, suppressing the weariness tightening my chest. "Hi, Dad. I hate to ask this, but is there any chance you and Mom could watch Lily for 3 nights? I've been pulled into emergency shifts and Lisa's out of town." There was silence on the line. Long enough for doubt to bloom. Then came his gruff reply. "I suppose we can rearrange a few things. When would you drop her off?" Relief washed over me, fleeting but real. "Tonight around 6. I'll pick her up Friday morning." Mom's voice filtered in faintly. "Make sure she brings her own entertainment. We don't have much for children her age anymore." After hanging up, I turned back to Lily. She was sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, coloring stars in her astronomy book. "Hey baby," I said gently. "Grandma and Grandpa said they'll watch you for a few nights while Mommy works. Is that okay?" She looked up at me, wide green eyes blinking. "I'll be super helpful and quiet," she said, hugging her stuffed otter Webster close. "Just like they like." That should have pierced me. But at the time I was just grateful. Grateful someone was willing to help. I packed her bag meticulously. Her allergy meds, labeled meals, nightlight, bedtime playlist downloaded to a tablet. I included a handwritten note with her daily routine and emergency contacts. Then I pulled out the quilt Anthony's mother had made for her when she was born, folding it neatly over her pajamas. As we pulled into my parents' driveway, Lily was quiet, hands gripping Webster like a lifeline. I leaned over, brushing her curls from her face. "Remember, honey, Grandma and Grandpa have different rules than we do. Be patient, okay?" "I know," she said softly. "I'll be easy. So they don't get tired of me." Karen opened the front door. Her smile was polite, practiced. "You're right on time." Dad was in the kitchen pouring wine. "Long shifts again?" he said without turning around. "Yeah," I replied. "Thank you again. I can't tell you how much I appreciate this." As I carried Lily's overnight bag inside, I paused by the kitchen doorway. Their voices were low but not low enough. "We'll have to tell her soon about the Hawaii plans," Dad said. "Let's wait until after she leaves," Mom replied. "No sense causing problems before we need to." My stomach twisted. I stepped back, pretending not to have heard. I should have asked. I should have taken Lily and left. But I told myself it was just a trip. A future vacation. Not something that affected this moment. I kissed Lily goodbye, holding her for an extra second. She smiled up at me, brave and bright. As I walked to my car, I looked back at the house. The lights were warm. The front porch tidy. A picture of stability. But behind that door, something had already shifted. Something I wouldn't see clearly until it was too late. The next morning, my phone buzzed during my shift. A photo of Victoria's kids, captioned, "Packing chaos for a surprise trip," popped up. I barely registered it as I sutured a deep cut in a patient's arm. Later that night, while grabbing coffee in the break room, I glanced again. Victoria had posted a story of suitcases, beach toys, and Madison dancing in a flowered dress. My heart sank. They were going on a trip. Not someday. Not next month. No. But I still didn't let the full picture in. Not yet. I told myself they'd planned it for after Friday. That they'd still be there when I came to pick up Lily. That no one would be so cruel. But deep down something old and bitter stirred. Something I'd felt in small moments since childhood. And as I finished my third shift and collapsed into a chair in the locker room, my phone lit up with a number I didn't recognize. "Ms. Hayes?" a voice asked when I answered. "This is Deborah from Lakeside Elementary. Lily wasn't in class this morning, and we haven't received a notification of her absence." My breath vanished. "She's staying with her grandparents," I managed. "They should have taken her to school. I'm afraid we haven't seen Lily at all today." The line buzzed in my ear. The coffee in my hand hit the floor. "They left her," I whispered. And I ran. The steering wheel was slick with sweat beneath my palms. I drove like my soul was on fire, still half in my hospital scrubs, coat unbuttoned, badge dangling. My phone was pressed to my shoulder on speaker, calling my parents' numbers one by one. No answer. And again. I gripped the wheel harder, the road stretching endlessly ahead of me. The 15-minute drive to their neighborhood felt like an hour. I ignored the honk when I cut off a minivan at the light. I didn't care. All I could hear was the voice of Lily's school secretary echoing in my mind. "We haven't seen Lily at all today." My hands trembled. I forced them to steady. They had to have just gotten the schedule wrong. That had to be it. I turned into their street, nearly clipping the curb. Their house stood at the end, sun-drenched and perfectly ordinary. My gut already knew something wasn't right. Both cars were gone. I parked sideways, engine still running, and rushed to the door. It was locked. I pulled out my emergency key and shoved it into the knob, breath short, heart sprinting. "Lily." I called out. "Dad? Mom?" Silence. I moved from room to room, calling her name louder each time. The house was clean. Too clean. No dishes in the sink. No shoes by the door. Her little suitcase wasn't in the hallway. Then I saw it. On the kitchen counter, near the fruit bowl, a single sheet of notepaper. White. My mother's precise cursive. "Samantha. Sorry, sweetie, we just couldn't take care of her. We've arranged for temporary placement until you're available again. They said you can contact Child Protective Services to make arrangements. Love, Mom and Dad." I read it once. Then again. The words didn't change. My knees buckled, but I didn't fall. I gripped the edge of the counter until my knuckles whitened. They gave her away. No phone call. No warning. No backup plan. They just handed her over. I scrambled for my phone. Fingers numb. I called CPS. The wait time was endless. Transferred. And again. My voice cracked as I explained who I was. Over and over. Finally, a calm voice on the line. "Yes. We do have a record of a child named Lily Hayes placed in emergency foster care yesterday evening." Yesterday. Not this morning. Yesterday. My voice was hoarse. "I'm her mother. I have full custody. My parents were babysitting. So they weren't her guardians." The woman's tone was professional, but something in it shifted. "They reported temporary inability to provide care. And listed you as unreachable. Indefinitely. Indefinitely. I was at work. I'm a trauma nurse. They knew my schedule. Ma'am, please try to stay calm. We understand this is distressing." "No," I said sharply. "Don't you dare tell me to stay calm. You let them hand over my daughter without checking?" "There should have been verification, yes, but in emergencies procedures can vary. I'll connect you with the assigned caseworker. I'm going there. Now." My voice was barely human. My body felt split from my mind. I was walking. Out the door. Into the car. Driving with tunnel vision. At a red light my phone buzzed. I glanced down. A social media tag. I almost didn't open it. But my thumb moved anyway. There was a photo. My father, sunglasses perched on his head, grinning on a Hawaiian beach. One arm around Jackson, my sister's son. My mother, Karen, laughing in the background beside Victoria and Madison. Matching flower lays. Sunset behind them. Caption: "Surprise family vacation. So grateful for grandparents who make everything magical. Hashtag family first, hashtag Ohana time." I stared at it. Blinked. The timestamp was last night. The exact hour Lily was dropped at CPS. Another post. My father helping Jackson snorkel. My mother building sandcastles. A reservation confirmation for a luxury resort in Maui. Mrs. Lawson, their neighbor, answered my call after 2 rings. Oh, hi Samantha. I saw your parents leave early yesterday morning with lots of luggage. I thought they were heading to the airport. You didn't see Lily with them? No. Actually, I asked about her. Your dad said she was staying with friends for a few days. Said it real quick and rushed into the car. My mouth was dry. They had packed bags, lied to neighbors, falsified information, and walked away like she was a suitcase too heavy to carry. They didn't forget. They didn't panic. They planned it. I turned the car toward CPS, my jaw clenched so tight it hurt. They didn't just abandon Lily, I whispered to myself. They tried to erase me. The CPS office smelled like old paper and disinfectant. I sat in a cold metal chair, numb, staring at the folder on the table. The caseworker, Andrea, was gentle but firm, explaining protocols and procedures, none of which mattered to me. All I cared about was one thing. Where is my daughter now? She's with a foster family, the Martinez household. They're licensed emergency caregivers. They've had Lily since last night. Take me to her. Andrea nodded, gathered her papers and motioned for me to follow. The drive across town felt like years. I stared out the window, silent, white-knuckling my phone in one hand. Notifications buzzed relentlessly, but I didn't look. I couldn't. Not yet. We pulled up to a 1-story ranch house with yellow trim and a mailbox shaped like a sunflower. A woman in her 50s stepped onto the porch as we approached. She had warm eyes, tired but kind. You must be Samantha, she said softly. Lily's in the backyard with my husband. She's been very quiet. I didn't wait. I stepped past the porch, heart hammering, boots crunching on gravel until I reached the gate. There she was. My daughter. Sitting cross-legged in the grass, holding a deflated rubber ball. Her shoulders slumped. Her curls tangled from sleep. Her favorite t-shirt, one she insisted on packing, was stained at the collar. She looked smaller than I remembered. Lily. She turned. For a heartbeat she just stared. Then her face crumpled. She dropped the ball and ran to me. Mommy. She collided with my legs so hard I staggered. Her arms wrapped around my waist like a vice. Her little body shook with sobs. I thought you weren't coming back, she gasped, pressing her face into my coat. Oh baby, I whispered, crouching down and pulling her in tight. I would never leave you. I was at the hospital. I thought you were safe. She hiccuped. Grandma said sometimes mommies need breaks. That maybe you needed a long one. I closed my eyes. My throat burned. I kissed the top of her head. None of that is true, sweetheart. You did nothing wrong. Later, inside the house, Mrs. Martinez offered Lily a snack and turned on cartoons. Andrea and I stepped into the kitchen to talk. They didn't mention you at all, she said, her tone clipped with restrained anger. They claimed they were her legal guardians, faced an emergency and needed immediate placement. They knew I was picking her up Friday morning. They knew where I was working. They lied. Andrea nodded. If they had simply said you were unavailable for a few nights, this placement never would have happened. There was no reason for it to escalate like this. But they deliberately withheld the truth. I pulled out my phone and opened social media. Victoria had just tagged me in another photo. My parents sitting poolside, sipping cocktails under an umbrella. Victoria and her husband Bradley grinning with their kids. The caption read, Madison got her hair braided with beads today. So spoiled by grandma and grandpa. #island life, #blessed. I scrolled. Photo after photo. My dad teaching Jackson how to snorkel. My mother shopping at a boutique. Sunset dinners. Oceanfront views. They were in paradise while my child cried herself to sleep in a stranger's home. Then the text came. Victoria, hey, what's going on? Police came to the hotel asking questions. Are you serious right now? Another one followed seconds later. Victoria, you're ruining everyone's vacation over nothing. Madison's crying because grandma's upset. What are you trying to prove? I set the phone down. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From fury. They lied to my daughter's face, I said to Andrea, and smiled for the camera while doing it. When it was time to leave, I knelt beside Lily on the couch. I'm going to get everything sorted out, okay? Mrs. Martinez will take care of you for just a little longer. I'll be back soon. Her lip trembled. Promise. Promise. I kissed her forehead and handed her Webster her stuffed otter. I'm getting you home. And they're going to answer for this. The next morning I sat across from Andrea in a CPS conference room, a pale green folder spread open between us. My fingers clenched the edge of the table but my voice was steady. I want to press charges. Andrea nodded. We've documented everything. We're classifying this under potential child abandonment and misrepresentation to a government agency. We'll need to involve the authorities and you'll need legal counsel. I'd already made that call. Rachel, my best friend from college and now a respected family attorney, had picked up on the first ring. After I explained what had happened, she was silent for 3 beats. Sam, this is more than neglect, she said finally. This is potentially criminal. Custodial interference, abandonment, false reporting. You're not overreacting. This is serious. It was the first time someone said it out loud and I didn't realize how much I needed to hear it. By midday I was home again. I hadn't eaten, hadn't slept more than a few hours over the last 4 days. But I couldn't stop. Not now. I sat at my kitchen table with Rachel on speakerphone and began building a timeline. I printed screenshots of social media posts. The beach photos, the matching lays, the timestamp on Victoria's Ohana time caption. I printed the CPS intake form showing mother unavailable. I compiled text messages and emails, including my own exchange arranging pickup and drop-off. I dug out Lily's school record showing I was her sole guardian. Then I wrote everything down. Every detail I could recall. Every sentence. Every discrepancy. The truth had to be airtight. Later that afternoon, I had a call with Mr. Powell, Lily's school counselor. He'd worked with kids in trauma before. His voice was calm but firm. Samantha, children internalize abandonment. It's common for them to assume it's their fault, even when it's clearly not. She'll need consistent reassurance that she didn't do anything to deserve what happened. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling. Do you think she'll recover from this? Children are resilient, he said gently. But they need stability. They need honesty, validation, and space to process. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with another text. Victoria, Jackson's asking why you're being so mean to Grandma and Grandpa. Can you at least stop involving the police? No apology. No acknowledgement. Just deflection. I powered off the phone. The hardest part of that day came that evening, during my scheduled visit with Lily at the Martinez home. She was already sitting on the front step when I arrived, swinging her legs. She ran into my arms the second she saw me. I packed a bag just in case I get to come home, she whispered. I smiled as best I could. Almost. We just need to finish a few papers, but it's happening soon. Inside, Mrs. Martinez had made her favorite mac and cheese. I watched her eat, slower than usual, eyes tired. When the cartoons started playing, I knelt beside her and gently asked, Do you want to tell me anything about what happened? She looked down. Grandma said, maybe you needed time away. That you called her and said you weren't ready to be a mom this week. I bit the inside of my cheek to keep from reacting. Then she packed my bag. She didn't even ask what I wanted to bring. Grandpa drove me to a gray building and said someone would take care of me. And what did you think? I asked. Lily's eyes filled. I thought, I must have done something wrong. Maybe I talked too much. Or maybe I wasn't easy enough. I wrapped my arms around her and held her tightly. No, sweetie. You didn't do anything wrong. Not one thing. After she fell asleep, I stepped into the kitchen to speak with Mrs. Martinez. She looked at me with gentle concern. When she arrived, she didn't say a word for 3 hours. Just held her otter. She finally whispered, Is this because I'm not as fun as my cousins? My chest caved in. I didn't let it show. I thanked her again, promised to keep her updated, then returned home. That night I pulled the final piece together. I called Detective Wilson directly. He picked up immediately. Based on what you've described, he said, there's enough to open an investigation. Especially with the premeditated element. Vacation booked, social media confirming intent, and misrepresentation to CPS. I took a deep breath. Then let's start. The next morning Andrea called. The paperwork's done. Lily can come home today. You'll both need to be here in person to finalize the release. The sun was just rising, casting light across the floor. I hadn't slept, but I'd never felt more awake. She was coming home. But this wasn't over. And I was only just getting started. Half a world away on a beach in Maui, the lie began to unravel. At precisely 7:05 a.m. Hawaiian time, 2 officers from the Maui Police Department approached the Oceanside Resort and Spa. Detective Barnes led the small team, clipboard in hand, flanked by hotel security. They walked purposefully through the quiet corridor of the 7th floor. Room 742. Registered to Ronald and Karen Baxter. Hotel surveillance footage would later show what happened next. The knock was firm. Not aggressive but unmistakably official. It took a few moments before the door opened. Ronald stood there in a white resort robe, his hair slicked back, eyes squinting at the morning light. "Yes. Mr. Ronald Baxter?" Detective Barnes asked. Ronald hesitated, then nodded slowly. "That's me. I'm Detective Barnes with the Maui Police Department. We need to speak with you and Mrs. Baxter regarding an active investigation involving your granddaughter, Lily Baxter." Confusion flickered across his face. Then the mask dropped. Alarm. Resistance. He instinctively tried to close the door. The officer next to Barnes moved a step forward. "We need to come in, sir." "Now." Karen appeared behind her husband, hair still in curlers, lips parted in shock. "This is ridiculous," she stammered. "We made proper arrangements. Samantha is overreacting." In the connecting suite, Victoria and her family had been jolted awake by the commotion. She came through the adjoining door in leggings and a t-shirt, her voice rising. "What's going on?" When the officers explained, her expression crumbled into disbelief. "You told me she knew," she snapped at her parents. "You said Samantha agreed." Ronald didn't answer. Karen stepped back, letting the officers in with trembling hands. In the room, matching Hawaiian shirts were folded neatly on the bed. A breakfast tray held half-eaten fruit and mimosas. It looked like a family enjoying a perfect morning. Except it wasn't. Detective Barnes opened the folder he carried. "Mr. and Mrs. Baxter, your daughter has filed a formal complaint with Child Protective Services and Connecticut law enforcement. She has provided documentation that you left her child in emergency foster care, falsely claimed legal guardianship, and misrepresented her availability." Ronald tried to wave it off. She needs more attention than we can provide. We thought it was safer. She's a lot for people our age. She's not special needs, I had told Barnes days earlier. She's just a child with an inhaler and a gluten allergy. They didn't want to deal with her. That's all it was." Karen began crying. "We left contact information. We didn't think. You left no contact number. No forwarding address. You listed her mother as unavailable indefinitely," Barnes said evenly. "We've confirmed your trip was booked 3 months ago." Victoria stood frozen. Bradley stepped forward, pulling her back gently. Their kids peeked around the hallway corner, eyes wide with fear. Outside the room, other hotel guests had begun filming. One older couple approached later, tears in their eyes. "I can't imagine doing that to my grandchild," the woman said softly. Hotel management offered a private conference room downstairs for the remainder of the interviews. Ronald and Karen were escorted out, still protesting but no longer defiant. Their vacation had ended. Not with a sunset but with a summons. Back in Connecticut, I sat at the edge of Lily's bed, helping her arrange her pillow and blankets just the way she liked. She was finally home, curled up beside Webster, a book open on her lap. I didn't tell her what had just happened. Not yet. But when my phone buzzed at 12:04 p.m. Eastern, I stepped into the hallway. "Detective Barnes here. We've completed the preliminary questioning. They're being cooperative, for now. They'll be flying back tomorrow. But not in first class." His voice was calm, efficient. I thanked him, then stared out the window at the quiet street beyond. It wasn't satisfaction I felt. Not exactly. It was resolve. Cold, clear, and permanent. Later that evening, Lily and I sat together under a blanket on the couch. She was unusually quiet. She looked up at me and asked, "Will I have to see them?" "Not unless you want to," I answered. "And never without me right next to you." She nodded, then added, "Jackson said his mom thinks you're being mean. That you're ruining everything." I pulled her close and kissed her temple. Sometimes adults disagree about what's right. But my job, my only job, is to keep you safe. To make sure people treat you with respect. That's what I'm doing. Even if they don't understand. Lily didn't say anything for a while. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she asked, Are they in trouble? I answered honestly. Yes. And they should be. That night I turned off my phone, closed the blinds, and let myself breathe for the first time in days. But I knew what came next. Tomorrow I'd face them. Not as a daughter, but as a mother. The courthouse was quiet in the early morning, its stone exterior washed in the pale gray light of winter. Inside, the air was sterile and still, heavy with unspoken tension. I sat at the long wooden table with my attorney Rachel beside me. Her presence steadied me, even as my stomach twisted with anticipation. Lily wasn't with me. She was at school where she belonged, drawing constellations and planning her upcoming class presentation on Saturn. I wanted her to have one normal day. Just one. Across the room, my parents sat stiffly behind their defense counsel. My father, Ronald, wore a navy suit I recognized from church. My mother, Karen, was in a pressed blouse and pearls, her posture rigid, her expression unreadable. They looked like people attending a fundraiser, not like grandparents on trial for abandoning their 8-year-old granddaughter. The bailiff called the session to order. Judge Franklin entered, a silver-haired woman with eyes like steel and a voice that didn't rise to command silence. It demanded it by nature alone. The charges were read aloud. Child abandonment, filing false statements, interference with lawful custody. My father's attorney stood and delivered his opening remarks. Your Honor, the Baxters acted in what they believed to be the best interest of the child. They were under stress, ill-equipped to manage Lily's particular needs, and made arrangements with professionals when they could no longer provide care. Rachel leaned in toward the microphone. Respectfully, Judge, the facts do not support that. The defendants booked an extended luxury vacation, misrepresented themselves to a state agency, and left their granddaughter with strangers, despite knowing her mother was due back in less than 48 hours. Then came the evidence. Photos. Social media posts. Travel confirmations. Witness statements. Mrs. Lawson's account of seeing them pack their luggage without Lily. The CPS intake form showing mother unavailable indefinitely. My text messages to my parents confirming pickup time. My work schedule from the hospital. It was all there. My father stood to make a personal statement. We didn't think it through completely, he said, his voice low and measured. We were overwhelmed. We didn't want to burden Samantha. She's been under a lot of pressure and we were trying to help in the best way we knew how. Judge Franklin didn't flinch. A regrettable error, she said dryly, is forgetting to water your neighbor's plants. Abandoning a child to state care while boarding a flight to Maui is not a mistake. It's a series of deliberate, conscious decisions. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a tissue but never looked at me. Not once. I had prepared for this. Rehearsed it in my mind for days. But nothing could prepare me for what happened next. The judge cleared her throat and turned to me. Ms. Hayes, you mentioned in your petition that your daughter wished to address the court. Is that still the case? My heart thudded. Yes, Your Honor. She nodded to the bailiff who opened the side door. Lily stepped in holding a small spiral-bound notebook. She wore her favorite cardigan, the one with stars on the sleeves. Her hair was pulled back, neatly braided. She walked slowly, not with fear but with determination. Rachel gave me a quick, reassuring nod. Lily stood on the small platform, her voice steady. When my grandma and grandpa left me, they told me my mom didn't want me that week. They said maybe she needed a break. But I didn't believe them. Because my mom always comes back. She looked up at the judge. Her voice didn't shake. It made me feel like I wasn't good enough. Like I was too much. But I know now that wasn't true. They didn't leave me because of me. They left because they didn't want to take care of me. You could hear a pin drop. She paused, then flipped to a second page. I'm not mad anymore, she said, but I'm still hurt. And I don't know if I want to see them again. The judge leaned forward slightly. Thank you, Lily. That was very brave. You may return to your seat. I met her at the door, arms open, and held her tightly. She buried her face in my shoulder. You were perfect, I whispered. Back in our seats, the courtroom was different. Not louder, but heavier. Everyone had seen what this truly was. Not a legal misunderstanding. Not a parenting accident. A betrayal. That afternoon, my parents accepted a plea deal. 6 months probation, mandatory counseling, 100 hours of community service at a children's advocacy center, and a formal admission of wrongdoing to the court. Outside the courtroom, the media waited. Someone had dubbed it the Hawaii grandparent case. I ignored the cameras. Victoria didn't come. But her texts did. You humiliated them. You destroyed our family over one mistake. Jackson and Madison are confused. Are you happy now? I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. Lily and I went home. She curled up on the couch beside me, holding Webster, tracing the stars on her sweater sleeve. Did I do okay today? She asked. I kissed the top of her head. You reminded them who you are. You did better than okay. 1 year later, the backyard was filled with laughter, not courtroom silence. Lily's 9th birthday party was small, intentional. Just a handful of people surrounded us beneath strung paper stars and silver streamers. Kelly and her daughter Emma brought cupcakes shaped like planets. Judith, Anthony's mother and Lily's only remaining grandparent in every sense that mattered, helped her set up a telescope by the patio. Mrs. Martinez and her husband arrived with a gift basket and hugs that still held warmth from that terrifying week. There were no speeches. No forced smiles. Just space to breathe, to laugh, to live without fear of the people who were supposed to protect us hurting us instead. Lily beamed as she blew out 9 candles on a galaxy-themed cake. Her voice was loud, confident now. Make a wish, space explorer. I teased. She closed her eyes and whispered something only the stars could hear. She was healing. And so was I. The court-ordered supervised visits had continued for a few months. Lily chose not to attend most of them. When she did go, she brought a notebook filled with questions and observations, things she and Dr. Thompson, her therapist, had prepared together. During one such session, she sat across from Ronald and Karen in a clinical therapy room, fidget toys on the table, Dr. Harmon present to mediate. You made me feel like I was easy to forget, she told them. You picked my cousins. You left me. My father had finally stopped trying to explain. I was wrong, he said quietly. From the beginning. We saw you as a reminder of the things we didn't like about your mom's life. But none of that was ever your fault. You're not a burden. You're a joy. I see that now. It was the first time he had spoken to her like a grandfather should. Not with defense. Not with guilt. But with humility. My mother's journey had been slower, tangled in appearances and shame. She repeated the same lines at first. We had good intentions, we just made a mistake. It wasn't until Lily asked plainly, if you loved me, why didn't you call my mom? That she faltered. I watched her face break for a second. The first crack in a wall I had spent a lifetime staring at. Still, progress is not perfection. And Lily knew she could walk away from any session the moment she felt unsafe. That choice was hers now. Anthony, surprisingly, had stayed on the sidelines after his brief attempt to insert himself during the legal process. He backed down when Rachel reminded him of his inconsistent visits and lapsed child support. He called once after the trial, muttered a vague apology and said he wanted to give Lily space. That space had been exactly what we needed. My promotion at Riverside Memorial came through months earlier, lead trauma coordinator. A position with better hours and a steadier paycheck. More time at home. More room to plan for the future. More chances to show Lily that I would always come back. We'd formed our own rhythm. Saturday morning pancakes. Tuesday library trips. Bedtime stories that turned into stargazing conversations. Lily started drawing again. Pages filled with planets, girls in spacesuits, and a character named Astercat who saved galaxies with kindness and courage. At school she flourished. Her teachers said she was brave, gentle, and deeply empathetic. Her therapist said she had processed the worst and come through stronger. She still had questions, sometimes still had fears, but they no longer consumed her. One day during a walk she took my hand and said, I used to think family was just who you're born into. But now I think it's who shows up when you're scared. Like Ms. Martinez. And Judith. And you. Always you. I stopped walking, knees threatening to give. I knelt in front of her and held her face in my hands. That's exactly right, I whispered. Family is who stays. Who fights for you. Who makes sure you never, ever feel like you don't matter. She nodded solemnly. Then we have a really big family. Yes, we did. I'd spent so much of my life chasing the approval of people who measured love with conditions. Who used guilt like currency. But standing here in the backyard of a life we built ourselves, I realized something simple and absolute. We didn't need them to make us whole. We were already enough. That night, after all the cake was eaten and the guest had gone home, I tucked Lily into bed. She hugged Webster, now slightly ragged but still her constant companion. "Mom," she said as I turned off the lamp, "I'm not scared anymore when you go to work." I looked at her in the soft glow of her star projector. "No." She smiled. "Because I know you'll always come back." I kissed her forehead, feeling tears gather behind my eyes. "Yes, baby. Always." As I closed her door and leaned against the hallway wall, I thought about how far we'd come. The courtroom, the betrayal, the grief, they were real. But they didn't define us. What defined us was love without condition, truth without excuse, and the strength to choose something better even when it hurt. Sometimes, the hardest battle is the one you fight against the people who raised you. But sometimes that battle leads you somewhere better. To peace. To clarity. To family redefined. That was our story. A story not just about betrayal but about courage. The kind it takes to protect a child even when it means standing against your own family. Samantha didn't choose this battle, but she chose to fight it, not with revenge but with resolve. And in the end, what she found wasn't just justice. It was clarity. She showed us that real family isn't about blood or last names. It's about who stays, who shows up, and who refuses to let you feel alone in the dark. Have you ever had to make a painful decision to protect someone you love? What gave you the strength to do it? Let us know in the comments. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful true stories about resilience, truth, and the people who choose love, even when it's hard.